Get this trash off my desk!
Professor Hartwell flung the essay across the table.
A 4-star general, right? And I'm the Queen of England.
Benjamin stood still.
It's the truth, publicly humiliating, ma'am.
The truth?
She snatched the paper and ripped it in half, right in front of the whole lecture hall. Laughter. Phones out. Someone in the back whistled. Benjamin's hand dropped to the silver bracelet on his wrist. He said nothing.
Sit down. Publicly for it.
Hartwell's voice cut like glass.
Next time, write about something believable for someone like you.
He sat down. But what Hartwell didn't know, what nobody in that room could have guessed, was who would walk through that exact door in less than 24 hours. 24 hours earlier, room 214 had smelled like coffee and old carpet. Professor Hartwell's creative writing seminar. 43 students. One assignment pinned to the whiteboard. Write about the person who shaped your values. 2 pages. Be honest. Benjamin Adams had spent 3 hours on his essay. He wrote about growing up on military bases. Fort Bragg, Fort Hood, Camp Humphreys in South Korea. 6 schools by the time he was 12. He never stayed long enough to make best friends. Never stayed long enough to finish a full soccer season. He wrote about his father. A man who left before sunrise and came home after dark. A man who missed birthdays, school plays, and 2 Christmases. But who called every single night, no matter where in the world he was stationed. No matter the time zone, the phone would ring at exactly 8:15. You still up, Ben? Yes, sir. Good. Tell me one thing you learned today. Every night, same question, same voice. Steady as a compass. Benjamin wrote about the last time his father came home from deployment. The airport terminal, the uniform, the 4 stars on each shoulder that made strangers stop and salute. His mother was crying. His little sister sprinting across the polished floor screaming, "Daddy!" so loud the whole terminal turned around. He wrote about what those stars meant. Not rank, not power. Sacrifice. 26 years of service. 3 combat tours. A man who had bled for a country that sometimes still looked at him and saw only the color of his skin. At the bottom of the second page, Benjamin had written, "My father taught me that dignity is not something anyone can give you, and it's not something anyone can take away." He stapled the pages, slid them into the pile on Hartwell's desk. Felt good about it. The next morning, Hartwell had read every essay in the stack. She had smiled at some, nodded at others. When she reached Benjamin's, she stopped, read it twice, looked up at him sitting in the 3rd row, looked at his dark skin, his worn sneakers, his second-hand backpack. And she made up her mind. Benjamin Adams, come to the front. Benjamin walked to the front of the lecture hall. He could feel every pair of eyes tracking him. The room had gone quiet, the way rooms do right before something ugly happens. Hartwell held his essay between her thumb and forefinger. She didn't look at him. She looked at the class. "I want to read something to all of you," she said, "as an example of what not to do." She cleared her throat and began reading aloud. Not the way a teacher reads a student's work. The way a comedian reads a punchline. "My father is a 4-star general in the United States Army. He has served for 26 years, including 3 combat deployments." She paused, let the words hang in the air. Then she looked up with a thin smile. A 4-star general. That's the highest peacetime rank in the military. There are fewer than 15 of them at any given time in the entire country. She turned to Benjamin. "And one of them is your daddy?" The first laugh came from the back row. Then a second. Then the whole left side of the hall joined in. Benjamin kept his hands at his sides. "Yes, ma'am. General Raymond Adams." "General Raymond Adams," she repeated, drawing out each syllable like she was tasting something rotten. "I see. And I suppose he flies home on Air Force One for your birthday, too?" More laughter. Louder now. The kind that feeds on itself. Preston Cole, sitting in the second row with his polo collar popped and his father's class ring on his finger, leaned back in his chair. Maybe his dad's a general at the local car wash. He said it just loud enough for everyone to hear, just quiet enough to deny later. The room roared. Hartwell didn't stop it. She didn't even try. She waited for the laughter to crest, then raised one hand for silence. The room obeyed her instantly. That was the thing about Hartwell. She controlled rooms the way conductors control orchestras. Every student knew the rhythm. Laugh when she laughs, stop when she stops. She picked up the essay, aligned the edges neatly, and then, with both hands, tore it in half. The sound of ripping paper cut through the silence like a gunshot. "This," she said, holding up the two halves, "is what happens when you waste my time with fantasy." She dropped the pieces on the floor in front of Benjamin's shoes. "Pick them up, sit down, and write me a new essay about your father's real job, whatever that actually is." Benjamin looked at the torn pages on the ground. He didn't bend down. "Ma'am, everything I wrote is true." The room went still. Not the respectful kind of still, the kind where people hold their breath because they can sense the next hit coming. Hartwell's smile disappeared. She stepped closer. Close enough that her perfume reached him. Something expensive, something sharp. "Let me make something very clear to you, Mr. Adams." Her voice dropped, but carried perfectly in the acoustics of the hall. "I have been teaching at this university for 22 years. I have written 3 published textbooks. I have a doctorate from Columbia. And in all those years, I have never, not once, had a student sit in my classroom and lie to my face with this kind of audacity." She tilted her head, studied him the way someone studies a stain on a white tablecloth. "I don't know where you come from. I don't know what kind of stories you were raised on. But in this room, we deal in facts. And the fact is, young men who look like you do not have fathers who command at the Pentagon." The words landed like a slap across the face. Young men who look like you. Not young men who transfer in late. Not young men who are new to the program. Young men who look like you. Every black student in the room heard what she meant. There were only 3 of them, including Benjamin. The other 2 looked at their desks. One of them closed her laptop like she wanted to disappear into it. Benjamin's fingers curled, not into fists, around the silver bracelet. 4 stars, 1 heart. He could feel the engraving pressing ridges into the pad of his thumb. "My father earned those stars, Professor. Every one of them." "Earned." She almost spat the word. "I'm sure he did. Now sit down, Mr. Adams, before I report you for academic dishonesty. And believe me, I will." He walked back to his seat. The torn essay stayed on the floor. Nobody picked it up. Nobody looked at him. Not the girl who had borrowed his notes last Tuesday. Not the guy who had fist-bumped him in the hallway that morning. Not even the 2 other black students who sat frozen in their seats, afraid that eye contact would put them next. He was alone in a room of 112 people. And every one of them let it happen. The bell rang. Students poured out. Some laughed. Some whispered. Most just left, the way bystanders leave a car accident, relieved it wasn't them. Benjamin waited until the hall was empty. Then he bent down and picked up the two halves of his essay. He folded them carefully and slid them into his backpack. Not because she told him to, because his father's story deserved better than a dirty floor. After class, Preston Cole struck again. He posted a photo of the torn essay on the class group chat. Somebody had snapped it from 2 rows back. Caption: "When you lie so hard, even the professor can't keep a straight face." 43 likes in the first 20 minutes. Comments piled up like kindling on a bonfire. "Bro really said his dad's a general, Lamau. Next he'll say his mom runs NASA. Somebody check if he even got into this school legit. Financial aid general, maybe." Each comment was a small cut. One by one, they didn't seem like much, but together they bled. A girl named Megan Harper, Preston's girlfriend, added a comment with a laughing emoji and a clown face. Stolen valor runs in the family, I guess. She had never spoken to Benjamin, didn't know his last name until today. But she had an opinion now, and the group chat gave her a stage. Benjamin saw every notification. He didn't respond to any of them. He sat in the far corner of the library with his phone face down on the table and stared at the wall. The fluorescent light above him buzzed. The chair was hard plastic. He could hear other students studying 3 tables away, living their normal Tuesday afternoon. He envied them in a way he couldn't name. That evening, Hartwell made her next move. She sent an email, not to Benjamin, to Dean Henry Crawford and the Academic Integrity Committee. Subject line: Fraudulent Assignment, Benjamin Adams, CW 201. The body was 4 paragraphs long. Words like fabrication, persistent dishonesty, disruptive confrontation, and immediate disciplinary review appeared throughout. She used the phrase, "this student," 7 times. She never used his first name. She copied 2 other professors in the English department. She copied the director of student conduct. She did not copy Benjamin. By 7 o'clock that evening, his student portal showed a red flag on his academic record. Academic integrity violation, under review. The words burned on the screen like a brand. At 7:30, his roommate Tyler came back to the dorm. Tyler was from Greenwich, Connecticut. Old money, prep school, lacrosse scholarship. He walked in, glanced at Benjamin sitting on the bed, and said nothing. He put in his earbuds, opened his laptop, and turned his back. He had seen the group chat. He had made his choice. The room was 12 feet wide. It felt like a coffin. At 8 o'clock, Benjamin opened his phone again. The group chat had grown. Someone had photoshopped his face onto a general's uniform, with a clown nose and a mop in his hand. It had been reposted to 3 other group chats. A sophomore he had never met sent him a direct message. "Just admit you made it up, bro. Nobody's gonna believe you." Benjamin closed the phone, placed it face down, pulled the torn essay from his backpack, and laid the 2 halves side by side on his desk. The edges were ragged where she had ripped through the staple, but every word was still there. Every word was still true. At 8:15, he called his father. It rang twice. "Ben." The voice was deep, steady. The same voice that had called every night at 8:15 for 19 years. The voice that had said goodnight from Kabul, from Ramstein, from the Situation Room at the Pentagon. The voice that never shook. "Dad." A pause. Raymond Adams had spent 3 decades reading silences, in briefing rooms, in combat zones, across negotiation tables with men who held the fate of thousands in their hands. He could hear everything his son wasn't saying. Tell me, Benjamin told him. The essay, the reading aloud, the laughter, the tearing, the words, young men who look like you, the group chat, the memes, the academic flag, Tyler's silence. All of it in one long exhale, like he had been holding his breath since 9:30 that morning. When he finished, the line was quiet for 4 seconds. In Raymond's world, 4 seconds of silence was a lifetime. Then he spoke. Listen to me, son. You told the truth. That is all that matters. Don't apologize. Don't rewrite a single word. Don't let anyone in that room convince you that who I am, who we are, is something to be ashamed of. Benjamin's throat tightened. They flagged my record, Dad. They're talking about a disciplinary hearing. Good. Good. A hearing means a room full of people. And a room full of people means witnesses. Raymond's voice didn't waver, not even slightly. Hold your head up one more day. Can you do that for me? Benjamin looked at the bracelet. 4 stars, 1 heart. Yes, sir. That's my son. I'll see you tomorrow. The call ended. Benjamin set the phone down and looked at the torn essay on his desk. 2 halves, ragged edges. Every word is still true. He didn't sleep that night. He lay in the dark, turning the bracelet around and around his wrist, listening to Tyler's breathing across the room. The easy sleep of someone who had nothing to prove and nothing to lose. Outside the window, the campus was still. The dining hall had closed, the library lights had gone dark. The group chat had finally gone quiet. Somewhere across the country, in a house 15 minutes from the Pentagon, a 4-star general set down his phone, opened his closet, and pulled out his dress uniform. He brushed the shoulders, straightened the 4 stars on each epaulette until they caught the light. Then he made one more call. Not to his son, to someone else entirely. The next morning, Benjamin received an email at 6:45. The subject line read, Mandatory appearance, academic integrity hearing, 10 a.m., room 108, administration building. The sender was Dean Henry Crawford's office. The tone was formal. The message was clear. Show up or face automatic expulsion. Benjamin read it twice. Then he showered, dressed, and walked across campus in the early fog. The grass was wet. The buildings looked gray. Students passed him on the sidewalk without a glance, except for 2 who nudged each other and whispered something he couldn't hear, but could feel. He arrived at the administration building at 9:30. The hallway outside room 108 smelled like floor wax and old paper. A secretary behind a glass window told him to sit and wait. She didn't offer him water. She didn't say good morning. At 9:50, Professor Hartwell arrived. She wore a navy blazer and heels that clicked on the marble floor like a metronome. She carried a leather folder under her arm, thick with papers. She walked past Benjamin without looking at him, without acknowledging he existed. She knocked on the door of room 108, and someone opened it from inside. Benjamin caught a glimpse before the door closed. A long conference table. 5 chairs on one side, 1 chair on the other. He knew which side was his. At 9:55, Dean Crawford stepped into the hallway. Henry Crawford was 61 years old, silver-haired, square-jawed, the kind of man who had been handsome in college and had spent the next 40 years making sure everyone remembered it. He had run the English department for 14 years. He played golf with the university president. He had tenure thicker than concrete. He looked at Benjamin the way a judge looks at a defendant who has already been convicted. Mr. Adams, come in. The hearing room was cold. Not the kind of cold from air conditioning. The kind of cold that comes from a room designed to make you feel small. 5 people sat on one side of the table. Dean Crawford in the center. Professor Hartwell to his right, her leather folder open, pages flagged with colored tabs. To Crawford's left sat Dr. Patricia Hale, chair of the Academic Integrity Committee, a thin woman with reading glasses on a chain who had not smiled since 2014. Next to her, Professor Gerald Whitmore, who taught American literature and had once written an op-ed defending Hartwell's rigorous standards in the campus newspaper. At the end of the row, a graduate student named Claire Something, who was there to take minutes and would not speak a single word for the entire proceeding. On the other side of the table, one chair, empty, waiting for Benjamin. No advocate, no advisor, no parent. The email had not mentioned that he could bring anyone. He hadn't thought to ask. He sat down. The chair was hard. The table was wide. The distance between him and the panel felt like a canyon. Crawford opened a manila folder. Mr. Adams, you've been called here today regarding a formal complaint filed by Professor Hartwell. The complaint alleges that you submitted a fraudulent essay in her creative writing seminar. Specifically, that you fabricated your father's occupation and military rank. He looked up. Do you understand the charge? Yes, sir. And it's not true. Crawford didn't blink. Professor Hartwell, would you like to present your case? Hartwell straightened in her chair. She opened her leather folder and spread 3 printed pages on the table like a prosecutor laying out evidence. This student submitted an essay claiming his father is a 4-star general in the United States Army. A 4-star general. That is one of the highest-ranking positions in the entire military. There are, at any given time, approximately 12 to 15 individuals holding that rank across all branches. She paused for effect. I have been an educator for 22 years. I have reviewed thousands of student essays, and I have never encountered a claim this outlandish from a student with this profile. She let the word sit. Everyone at the table understood what she meant. Nobody challenged it. I asked Mr. Adams to rewrite the essay with factual content. He refused. He was confrontational in front of the entire class. I believe this constitutes both academic dishonesty and disruptive behavior. Crawford nodded slowly. He turned to Benjamin. Mr. Adams, do you have anything to say? Benjamin leaned forward. Everything in that essay is true. My father is General Raymond Adams. He serves at the Pentagon. I can provide proof. His official page is on the Department of Defense website. You can verify it in 30 seconds. Silence. Crawford glanced at Hartwell. Hartwell glanced at Whitmore. Whitmore studied the table. Nobody opened a laptop. Nobody pulled out a phone. Nobody typed a single search into a single browser. 30 seconds of effort, and not one of them was willing to spend it. Crawford cleared his throat. Mr. Adams, verification is not the purpose of this hearing. The purpose is to address Professor Hartwell's formal complaint and to determine appropriate disciplinary action. Benjamin stared at him. You're not even going to check? We are here to evaluate the complaint as filed. The complaint is that I lied. I'm telling you I didn't. And I'm telling you how to prove it. Right now. Crawford's jaw tightened. Mr. Adams, I would advise you to watch your tone. You are a first-semester freshman. Professor Hartwell is a tenured member of this faculty with an impeccable record. This committee will weigh the evidence and make a determination. The evidence. There was no evidence. There was Hartwell's word against his. And in this room, her word weighed more. It had always weighed more. Dr. Hale spoke for the first time. Her voice was thin and dry. Mr. Adams, are you aware that academic dishonesty can result in suspension or expulsion? Yes, ma'am. And you maintain your claim? It's not a claim. It's the truth. Hale wrote something on her notepad. She didn't look up. Crawford leaned back. We'll take a brief recess to deliberate. Mr. Adams, please wait outside. Benjamin stood. He looked at the 5 faces across the table. Not one of them met his eyes. Not one of them had typed his father's name into a search bar. Not one of them had considered, even for a moment, that a black kid from a military family might be telling the truth. He walked out of the room. The door closed behind him with a soft click. He sat down on the bench in the hallway. The same bench, the same floor wax smell, the same silence. His phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. He opened it. Just heard about the hearing. Praying for you. Professor Caldwell. Nina Caldwell. She taught sociology in the building next door. She had heard about the essay incident from a student. She had wanted to speak up. She had drafted an email to Crawford the night before. But she was untenured. 3 years from review. One wrong move and her career was over. She had deleted the draft at midnight, then rewritten it at 1 in the morning, then deleted it again. At 2 a.m., she had done something else entirely. She had found a number she wasn't supposed to have, a number passed through a chain of faculty contacts who knew people in Washington. She had sent a short message, not an email, a text. Your son is being railroaded. Hearing tomorrow, 10 a.m., room 108, administration building. She didn't know if the message would reach anyone. She didn't know if it mattered. It mattered. At 9:58 that morning, 2 minutes before the hearing began, a black SUV with government plates had pulled into the visitor lot of the university. The driver opened the rear door. A tall black man stepped out. He adjusted the 4 gold stars on each shoulder of his dress uniform. He straightened his tie. He put on his cap. And he walked toward the administration building. Inside room 108, the deliberation lasted 11 minutes. When the door opened, Crawford's secretary leaned into the hallway. Mr. Adams, they're ready for you. Benjamin stood up. His legs felt heavy. He walked back in and sat in the same hard chair. The room smelled the same. Floor wax, stale coffee, and the faint tang of Hartwell's perfume. The same 5 faces watched him from across the canyon of the conference table. Crawford had his hands folded on the table. Hartwell sat with her chin slightly raised, the posture of someone who had already won. Dr. Hale's notepad was closed. Whitmore was adjusting his cufflinks. Claire, the minute-taker, had her pen poised over a fresh page. Crawford spoke. Mr. Adams, after reviewing Professor Hartwell's complaint and considering your response, this committee has decided. The door opened. Not slowly, not hesitantly. It opened the way a door opens when the person behind it has walked through 10,000 doors in 30 years of military service and has never once knocked on one he wasn't authorized to enter. A man stood in the doorframe. He was 6'2", broad shoulders, dark skin that caught the fluorescent light like polished mahogany. He wore the Army service uniform, dress blues, white shirt, black tie, gold buttons running in a precise line down his chest. On each shoulder, 4 gold stars sat in a diamond formation, gleaming under the overhead lights like they had been polished that morning. Because they had. His shoes were mirrors. His posture was a straight line from heel to crown. His cap was tucked under his left arm. His jaw was set. His eyes swept the room the way a commander's eyes sweep a battlefield, assessing positions, measuring threats, identifying who in this room had power and who only thought they did. Every person at that table stopped breathing. General Raymond Adams stepped into room 108. He didn't rush. He didn't raise his voice. He walked to the center of the room with the measured pace of a man who had briefed the Joint Chiefs of Staff, who had stood in the Situation Room while decisions were made that moved aircraft carriers and redrawn borders. A man who did not need to announce himself because his presence already had. He looked at Benjamin first. A single nod. The kind of nod that says, "I'm here. You did right." "Stand up." Benjamin stood. His eyes were wet, but his back was straight. Raymond turned to the panel. 5 faces stared at him. 5 faces that had been confident 30 seconds ago. 5 faces that were now rearranging themselves into expressions they hoped looked appropriate. Crawford was the first to speak. He rose to his feet so fast his chair rolled backward and hit the wall. Sir, we weren't expecting." "No," Raymond said. "You weren't." His voice filled the room without effort. Deep, controlled. The kind of voice that had commanded brigades and silenced rooms far more powerful than this one. He reached into the leather portfolio he carried and set 3 items on the conference table, one by one. Each one landed with a soft, deliberate sound. First, his military identification card. The photograph showed the same face that stood before them now. The rank line read General, 010, United States Army. Second, a framed copy of his official appointment letter, signed by the President of the United States and confirmed by the Senate. The date was 3 years ago. The language was formal, specific, and unmistakable. Third, a photograph. Raymond and Benjamin standing together on the steps of the Pentagon. Benjamin was wearing his high school graduation cap. Raymond was in full dress uniform. 4 stars. Both of them smiling. The photo had been taken 14 months ago. Raymond let the silence do its work. 5 seconds. 10. 15. The clock on the wall ticked. Hartwell's breathing grew shallow. Somewhere in the building, a phone rang and went unanswered. Then he spoke. "My name is General Raymond Adams. I serve as Deputy Chief of Staff of the United States Army. I have held this rank for 3 years. Before that, I served as a Lieutenant General for 4 years, a Major General for 3, and a Brigadier General for 2. I have completed 3 combat deployments: Iraq, Afghanistan, and Kuwait. I have been awarded the Distinguished Service Medal, the Legion of Merit, and the Bronze Star." He paused. Let the weight of the words settle into the room like something physical. "And I am Benjamin Adams' father." The room didn't make a sound. Not a breath. Not a chair creak. Not a pen scratch. Claire's hand had frozen above the page. Her mouth was open. Hartwell's face had drained of color. Her hands, which had been resting confidently on her leather folder, were now gripping the edge of the table. Her knuckles were white. Her mouth was slightly open, but nothing came out. The navy blazer she had put on that morning to look authoritative now looked like a costume. Raymond looked directly at her. "Professor Hartwell, I understand you read my son's essay aloud to your class. Is that correct?" Hartwell's voice came out thin, cracked at the edges. Yes, as part of a teaching exercise." "A teaching exercise," Raymond repeated the words without inflection. "And during this teaching exercise, you tore his essay in half in front of 112 students. Is that also correct?" "I was making a point about academic honesty." "You were making a point." Raymond took one step closer to the table. Not aggressive, not threatening. The step of a man who understands that physical presence is a form of punctuation. My son wrote that I am a 4-star general. You told him he was a liar. You destroyed his paper. You humiliated him in front of his peers. You reported him for academic dishonesty. You initiated a disciplinary hearing that could result in his expulsion from this university. He let each sentence land separately, like rounds hitting a target at measured intervals. And at no point, not once, did you or anyone on this committee take 30 seconds to type my name into a search engine and verify whether his essay was true. Crawford opened his mouth. General Adams, I assure you, our process—
Your process, Raymond said, turning to face him with the precision of a turret,
failed a 19-year-old student because 5 adults in this room decided that a black young man couldn't possibly be telling the truth about his own father. The word landed like a detonation. Black. He said it plainly, without anger, without accusation, and that made it worse. Because it wasn't an insult, it was a diagnosis. It named the disease that everyone in this room carried, but no one wanted to acknowledge. Crawford sat down. He didn't choose to sit down. His legs simply stopped holding him up. Dr. Hale removed her reading glasses. Her hands were trembling. She set them on the table with a small click that sounded enormous in the silence. Whitmore stared at the photograph of Raymond and Benjamin on the Pentagon steps. His face was the color of wet cement. He had written an op-ed defending Hartwell's rigorous standards 2 years ago. That op-ed was now a liability with a timestamp. Claire, the minute-taker, had stopped writing entirely. Her pen hovered above the page. She looked like she wanted to crawl under the table and emerge in a different timeline. Raymond turned back to Hartwell. His voice dropped half a register. Not louder, quieter. The kind of quiet that makes people lean in because they're afraid of what comes next. Professor Hartwell, when you looked at my son, what did you see? A student? A young man with a story to tell? Or did you see something else? Something that made it impossible. Not unlikely, not improbable, but impossible. That his father could hold the rank that I hold. Hartwell's lips pressed together. Her eyes were wet. Not from remorse. From the sudden, violent understanding that the ground beneath her had vanished and she was in free fall with nothing to grab. I made an assumption, she whispered. You made a decision, Raymond corrected. His voice was steady as granite. And it wasn't about the essay. It was about the skin color of the boy who wrote it. He didn't wait for her to respond. He turned to the full panel. I have already contacted the university's Office of Civil Rights. I have also spoken with the Department of Education's Title VI Compliance Division. My legal counsel is aware of every detail. What happened in that classroom, and what is happening in this room, is not a misunderstanding. It is not a lapse in judgment. It is discrimination, documented, witnessed, and recorded in your own minutes. He glanced at Claire's notepad. And it will be addressed. He picked up the photograph from the table, looked at it for a moment. Benjamin in his graduation cap. Both of them were smiling on those wide stone steps. Then he turned to his son. Benjamin, pick up your things. We're done here. Benjamin reached into his backpack and pulled out the 2 halves of his torn essay. He laid them on the conference table, side by side, directly in front of Professor Hartwell. The ragged edges lined up almost perfectly. Every word is still visible. Every word is still true. Then he walked out of the room beside his father. Side by side, the same height, the same posture, the same steady, unhurried stride. Behind them, room 108 was silent. Nobody moved for a very long time. The fallout began before Raymond and Benjamin reached the parking lot. Inside room 108, Crawford sat motionless for a full minute after the door closed. The torn essay halves lay on the table. Nobody touched them. Then he picked up his phone and called the university president. His hand was shaking. The conversation lasted 4 minutes. When he hung up, his face was gray. "This hearing is suspended," he said. "Effective immediately. All charges against Mr. Adams are dismissed." Hartwell looked at him. "Henry." "Don't." Crawford's voice was flat, emptied out. "Just don't." He stood and left. Dr. Hale followed. Whitmore walked out without a word. Claire closed her notebook and slipped through the door. Hartwell sat alone. The military ID, the appointment letter, the photograph, all gone. But Benjamin's torn essay was still there, laid out in front of her like an exhibit in a trial she had already lost. She stared at the handwriting. Neat, specific, dates, bases, deployments. The nightly phone call at 8:15. She had read every word and chosen not to believe a single one, because of the color of the hand that wrote them. By noon, the university's Office of Civil Rights had opened a formal investigation. Not into Benjamin, into Hartwell, into Crawford, into the process that allowed a tenured professor to humiliate a student and initiate a disciplinary proceeding without spending 30 seconds to verify a single fact. Within 48 hours, 3 other students came forward. All black, all with stories. Danielle Foster, a failing grade on an essay about her grandmother's civil rights work called Embellished Beyond Credibility. Terrence Mills, openly questioned whether he had written his own paper, told he must have had outside help. Olivia Grant, told her essay about growing up in a military family was statistically improbable. 3 students, 3 years. The same pattern. The same contempt dressed up as academic rigor. The campus newspaper broke the story on day 3. Professor accused of racial bias. 4 students come forward. Most read article in the paper's history. Alumni called the development office. 2 donors paused their pledges. Preston Cole deleted his group chat post. Then his account. Then his parking pass. Megan Harper posted a 2-sentence apology that included, "if anyone was offended." It was screenshotted and mocked within minutes. On day 4, the university president issued a statement. 3 paragraphs. Deeply concerned. Thorough review. Commitment to equity. It named no one and said nothing specific. On day 5, Raymond Adams released his own statement. 63 words. "My son told the truth. He was punished for it. The adults who were supposed to protect him failed at every level. I do not want apologies. I want accountability. I want a system that does not assume a black student is lying because of the color of his skin. My family will pursue every legal remedy available." It was shared 400,000 times in 2 days. Hashtag Truth Over Silence trended nationally. On day 6, the Board of Trustees held an emergency session. Hartwell, suspended without pay pending termination. Crawford, removed as dean, reassigned with no student contact. Dr. Hale, resigned from the Integrity Committee. Whitmore, withdrew his faculty leadership nomination. Professor Nina Caldwell was called into the president's office. Not for punishment, for recognition. She was asked to chair a new task force on bias in academic evaluation. She accepted on one condition: Benjamin Adams as student representative. He accepted. On day 7, Benjamin walked into room 214. A substitute professor stood at the front, Dr. Sarah Bennett, young, calm, and she did not look at any student differently than any other. Every seat was taken. But this time, the silence wasn't hostile. It was ashamed, or waiting, or hoping for a chance to be better. Dr. Bennett smiled. "I understand you were working on personal essays. I'd like to hear some, if anyone is willing to read aloud." Nobody moved for 10 seconds. Then Benjamin raised his hand.
He walked to the front. He reached into his backpack and pulled out 2 pieces of paper, taped together down the middle. The seam was visible. The tear was still there, but the words were whole again. He read his essay. Every word. The bases, the 6 schools, the 8:15 phone calls, his sister running across the terminal floor. His mother was crying. The 4 stars. The dignity that no one can give you and no one can take away. When he finished, the room was quiet. Not the cruel quiet of a week ago. The kind that happens when people realize they are hearing something true, and that they should have listened the first time. Then someone in the back row started clapping. One pair of hands, then another, then the whole room. Benjamin stood at the front of the lecture hall, the same spot where his essay had been torn in half. The same lights, the same seats. But everything was different now. 2 weeks later, Elaine Hartwell cleaned out her office. She packed 22 years into cardboard boxes. The textbooks she had written, the framed diplomas, the Columbia doctorate she had mentioned in every introduction, every faculty meeting, every classroom confrontation where she needed to remind someone, usually a student who didn't look like her, that she was the authority in the room. The termination letter was 3 pages long. It cited a sustained pattern of racially biased academic evaluation, and referenced not just Benjamin's case, but all 4 complaints. It noted that in each instance, the targeted student was Black. In each instance, the essay was personal. In each instance, Hartwell had questioned the student's truthfulness, without evidence and without verification. The letter used the word systemic twice. It used the word unacceptable 3 times. She did not appeal. There was nothing left to appeal to. Dean Crawford's reassignment was quieter, but no less final. He was moved to the Office of Institutional Research, a windowless suite on the 3rd floor of a building most students didn't know existed. His nameplate was removed from the English department directory within a week. His golf games with the university president stopped without explanation. Nobody called to check on him. Nobody sent flowers. Nobody needed to. Everyone understood what happens when you protect the wrong person for the wrong reasons. The university announced 3 new policies and a joint statement with the Board of Trustees. First, all academic integrity complaints would now require a 48-hour verification period before any hearing could be scheduled. Faculty were required to document the specific evidence underlying their claim, not suspicion, not instinct, not the way a student seemed. Evidence, concrete and checkable. Second, a bias review panel, chaired by Professor Nina Caldwell, would audit grading patterns across every department annually. Disparities would be flagged, investigated, and published in the university's transparency report for anyone to read. Third, every incoming faculty member would complete a mandatory training module on implicit bias in academic evaluation. Hartwell's case would be included as a case study. Her name would not be used. It didn't need to be. Everyone would know. Benjamin's academic record was scrubbed clean. The red flag disappeared from his student portal, as if it had never been there. The Academic Integrity Committee sent him a formal letter of apology,
signed by all remaining members. It was 4 paragraphs long and used the word regret 3 times. Benjamin read it once, folded it, put it in a drawer. He didn't need their regret. He had his essay. The video of Benjamin reading his taped-together essay in room 214, someone had filmed it on their phone, was posted online with the caption, "He told the truth. They didn't believe him. Watch what happened next." It reached 2 million views in 4 days. Comments poured in from veterans, military families, Black students at universities across the country, parents, teachers, and strangers who had never met Benjamin Adams but recognized something in his story that felt like their own. #TruthOverSilence became more than a hashtag. It became a conversation. School boards referenced it in policy meetings. Diversity officers cited it in training sessions. A congressman mentioned it on the floor of the House during a debate on educational equity. A retired general shared it with one word: respect. Tyler, Benjamin's roommate from Connecticut, knocked on his door one evening. He stood in the hallway with his hands in his pockets, unable to look Benjamin in the eye. "I should have said something," Tyler said. "That first night, when you came back from class, I saw the group chat. I knew what happened, and I just put in my earbuds." Benjamin looked at him for a long moment. "Yeah," he said. "You should have." Tyler nodded, swallowed hard. "I'm sorry." "I know." Benjamin didn't invite him in, but he didn't close the door either. He left it open, the way his father had taught him. Not because people deserve forgiveness automatically, but because a closed door helps no one. And Benjamin Adams was not the kind of man who closed doors. That Sunday evening, Benjamin called his father. 8:15, as always. The phone rang once. "Ben? Dad. How was your week?" Benjamin looked at the bracelet on his wrist. 4 stars, 1 heart. He looked at the essay on his desk, taped together, slightly creased, every word still legible, still true. "It was a good week, Dad." A pause, then Raymond's voice, warm and steady as it had always been, across every time zone, through every deployment, on every single night for 19 years. "That's my son." Benjamin Adams still wears the bracelet. Every day. 4 stars, 1 heart. He never takes it off. He finished his freshman year with a 3.8 GPA. He declared a double major, English and political science. He joined the university's student advocacy board. On the first day of his sophomore year, he walked into room 214 and sat in the front row. Same seat, same building, different world. The essay is still taped together. It sits in a frame on his desk now. A reminder that the truth doesn't stop being true just because someone refuses to hear it. If someone had torn up your truth in front of everyone you knew, would you have stood your ground? Or would you have rewritten the story they wanted to hear? Drop your answer in the comments. Share this if it hit home. And subscribe, because stories like this need to be told.
So, Benjamin walked out of that hearing room, side by side with his father, same head, same posture, same stride, and behind them, 5 adults who couldn't even look each other in the eye, because not one of them took 30 seconds to Google a name. But here's what stays with me. It's not the 4 stars. It's not the Pentagon. It's that phone call every single night at 8:15 for 19 years, from Kabul, from Germany, from the Situation Room. Same question. Tell me one thing you learned today. That's not a general talking. That's a father showing up. And when the world told Benjamin his father didn't exist, he picked up those thorns paid off a dirty floor, not because she told him to, because his father's story deserved better than that. Dignity is not something anyone can give you, and it's not something anyone can take away. Now, let me ask you something. Have you ever told your truth and had someone look you in the face and say, "I don't believe you"? Not because of what you said, but because of who you are. Did you rewrite the story they wanted to hear? Or did you tape those pages back together and read it louder? Drop your answer below. I read everyone. Share this if someone who needs it today. Subscribe so you never miss these stories. Because the truth doesn't stop being true just because someone refused to hear it.